The morning Earth fell from galactic grace began like any other on the Valerian diplomatic station orbiting Mars. Commander Ariachan stood before the crystalline observation window, watching the blue-green marble of her homeworld rotate peacefully below, unaware that in 3 hours, representatives from 47 star systems would vote to dissolve humanity's membership in the Galactic Concordat. They would brand Earth a minor protectorate, strip away its voting rights, and reduce humanity to a servitor species tasked with manual labor for the more evolved civilizations. Aria's reflection stared back at her, sharp brown eyes, regulation military haircut, and a jaw set with determination that had carried her through 2 decades of service. She was the youngest human to ever achieve commander rank in the Concordat Defense Fleet, and possibly the last one who ever would be. "You're thinking too loud again," came a melodic voice behind her. Aria didn't turn, but her lips quirked into the ghost of a smile. She would recognize that voice anywhere, even though it carried harmonic frequencies human vocal cords could never produce. Kelthras approached with the fluid grace characteristic of his people, the tyranny. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his skin shifting through subtle shades of azure and silver depending on his emotional state. Currently, he displayed the deep sapphire that Aria had learned meant concern. His luminous golden eyes met hers in the window's reflection, and for a moment, they simply existed together in the comfortable silence of 2 people who had learned to communicate beyond words during their 3 years serving side by side. "The vote is in 90 minutes, Aria said quietly. "Ambassador Trell has been meeting with the coalition all week. The numbers aren't in our favor." Kelthras moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the slight electromagnetic field that surrounded all tyranny. His people were energy manipulators, capable of interfacing directly with technology and even disrupting electronic systems with focused thought. They were considered one of the Concordat's most advanced species, which made what he said next even more significant. "Then the Concordat is making the greatest mistake in its 30,000-year history," Kelthras stated, his voice carrying an edge that made the translator implant behind Aria's ear buzz slightly. "They see humanity's youth as a species and confuse inexperience with incapability. They look at your short lifespans and assume you cannot think in the long-term scales required for true civilization. They are fools." Aria finally turned to face him fully, searching his features for any sign of the political platitude, but found only genuine conviction. "Your people are voting against us, Kel. The Cyrene delegation hasn't wavered from the coalition's position." Something painful flickered across his expression, his skin briefly flashing to a stormy gray before he controlled it. Their relationship existed in a complicated space, publicly professional, privately something neither had fully defined, and currently strained by the fact that his government was actively working to subjugate hers. "My people are terrified," Kelthras admitted, his voice dropping lower. "Humanity learned to split the atom within a century of industrial revolution. You achieved artificial intelligence in less than 2. You went from first flight to establishing lunar colonies in a single human lifetime. Do you understand what that looks like to species who took tens of thousands of years to accomplish the same milestones?" He stepped closer, and Aria caught the scent that always accompanied him, ozone and something sweet, like rain on metal. "The Concordat sees a species evolving at exponential rates, and they want to cage you before you surpass them." Before Aria could respond, her communication implant chirped urgently. She tapped the device behind her ear, and the voice of Lieutenant Marcus Webb filled her head. "Commander, we have a situation. You need to get to operations immediately." The tension in Marcus's voice made her spine straighten automatically. He was ex-military intelligence, not prone to panic or exaggeration. "On my way," Aria replied, already moving toward the door. Kelthras fell into step beside her without question, his longer stride easily matching her rapid pace. They navigated the curved corridors of the station, passing clusters of alien dignitaries from a dozen different species. A group of insectoid wrecks clicked their mandibles in agitation as they hurried past. A pair of gaseous lumens flickered in their containment suits, their light patterns suggesting heated discussion. The entire station hummed with pre-vote tension. Operations was in controlled chaos when they arrived. The large circular room housed 20 monitoring stations, each staffed by multi-species crews tracking everything from local shipping lanes to deep space communications. Holographic displays floated above each console, painting the room in shifting blue and green light. Marcus stood at the central command platform, his dark hands flying across the holographic interface, pulling up data streams and magnifying sensor readings. He looked up as Arya approached, his face grim. "We've detected an unscheduled fleet emergence from hyperspace," Marcus reported without preamble. "Sector 77 Delta, approximately 4 light hours from our current position." He gestured, and the central holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional tactical map. Dozens of red markers appeared in formation, too many, too organized to be anything but military. "Identification?" Arya demanded, her mind already racing through possibilities. Unannounced military movements this close to a major diplomatic gathering violated every Concordat protocol. "That's the problem, Commander," Marcus said, expanding the sensor data. "They're broadcasting Concordat military transponders, but the ship configurations don't match any known fleet composition. And the energy signatures." He trailed off, pulling up a comparative analysis that made Arya's blood run cold. The energy outputs were massive, far beyond standard Concordat vessels. Kelthras leaned over the display, his eyes narrowing as his skin shifted to a concentrated violet, the color of deep focus. He reached out, his fingers hovering above the holographic interface, and Arya saw the faint shimmer of energy as he connected directly to the station's sensors. His ability to interface with technology still fascinated her, even after 3 years of witnessing it. "These ships are running stealth configurations," he said, his voice distant as he processed data. "Someone has gone to considerable effort to mask their true capabilities. The energy signatures suggest weapon systems that exceed Concordat regulations by a factor of 4. "Can you identify the ship class?" Arya asked, watching the tactical display with growing unease. The fleet wasn't moving toward the station, but it wasn't leaving either. They were holding position, waiting for something. Kelthras's frown deepened, his skin flickering between violet and a crimson that Arya had learned meant alarm. "No, but I can tell you what they're powered by. These ships are running on dark matter reactors, technology that was supposedly abandoned by the Concordat 2,000 years ago because it was deemed too dangerous and unstable." He pulled back from the interface, meeting Arya's eyes. "Someone has been building a secret fleet using forbidden technology. The question is, why bring it out of hiding now?" The answer hit Arya like a physical blow. "The vote," she breathed. "They're here because of the vote." Marcus nodded slowly, his expression confirming he'd reached the same conclusion. "But which side are they on? Are they here to support Earth's demotion or prevent it?" Before anyone could speculate further, the station's communication system crackled to life with a priority override, the kind reserved for dire emergencies. A voice, filtered through multiple translation matrices but still carrying an unmistakable note of authority, filled operations. "Attention Valerian Station and all Concordat representatives. This is Fleet Admiral Zethros of the Unified Coalition Enforcement Fleet. As of this moment, all scheduled proceedings are suspended. Any resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Prepare for compliance inspections." The channel cut off, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Arya's mind raced, piecing together the implications. The Unified Coalition, that was the block of older species who had been pushing hardest for Earth's subjugation. The Vrex, the Telonians, the Kortian Collective. They'd apparently decided not to trust the democratic process and had instead brought military force to ensure the outcome they wanted. "This is a coup," Marcus said quietly, voicing what they were all thinking. "They're going to force the Concordat to comply at gunpoint." Kelthras's skin had gone pure crimson now, his usual composure cracking to reveal genuine anger. "This is madness. The Concordat has maintained peace for 30 millennia precisely because we don't settle disputes with military force. If this precedent is set, then the Concordat as we know it is finished," Arya completed. "And Earth is the excuse they're using to tear it down." She turned to Marcus. Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. They need to know what's happening. And start quietly alerting our people on the station to prepare for evacuation protocols. Commander, one of the junior officers called out from a monitoring station, her voice tight with stress. The young Terran woman, Ensign Park, gestured frantically at her display. I'm detecting transport signatures. Multiple coalition ships are launching boarding craft. They're heading for the station's docking ports. Kelthras cursed in his native language, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. They're not waiting for cooperation. They're taking control of the station by force. He met Arya's eyes, and she saw the conflict there, his duty to his people warring with something else, something that had been growing between them for 3 years. Arya, you need to leave. Now. If they take control of the station, they'll arrest the entire human delegation. You'll be used as hostages to force Earth's compliance. Arya's jaw tightened. I'm not abandoning our people or the delegates who supported us. Kelthras gripped her arm, his touch gentle despite the urgency. I'm not asking you to abandon anyone. I'm asking you to trust me. There are others, delegates from species who see this for what it is, who won't stand for this coup. But we need time to organize, and we can't do that if the coalition is holding Earth's military commander as a prisoner. Every instinct Arya had screamed against running, against leaving her post. But Kelthras was right. If she was captured, she became leverage against Earth. Where? She asked simply. Kelthras's skin shifted to a determined gold. There's a network of service tunnels that run through the station's superstructure. The coalition forces won't know about them, they're not on the official schematics. I can get you and the essential human personnel to the emergency hangar where your diplomatic shuttle is docked. Marcus was already moving, pulling up the station schematics and highlighting alternative routes. I can coordinate the evacuation from here, Commander. Buy us as much time as possible before they realize what we're doing. Arya made the hardest decision of her career. Do it. Get our people out quietly. Marcus, you're in charge of operations until I return. Transmit everything we know about that fleet to Earth Command on a secure tight beam. Make sure someone knows what happened here. The next 20 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Kelthras led Arya and a growing group of human personnel through access panels and maintenance corridors she hadn't known existed. The service tunnels were cramped, dimly lit, and filled with the hum of the station's vital systems. They moved in near silence, the group consisting of 12 humans, a mix of military officers, civilian diplomats, and technical specialists. Ambassador Trell, Earth's chief representative, was among them, his usual political composure replaced by grim determination. As they navigated deeper into the station's infrastructure, Arya's communication implant crackled with fragmentary reports from Marcus. Coalition forces had taken control of the main docking bays. They'd locked down the central command hub. Station security was being systematically disarmed and detained. The coup was proceeding with the precision of something long planned. Kelthras suddenly held up a hand, signaling a stop. The group froze in the narrow corridor, barely breathing. Through the metal walls, they could hear the heavy footfalls of coalition soldiers sweeping the adjacent section. The sound grew closer, then mercifully faded as the patrol moved on. When silence returned, Kelthras whispered, "We're close. The emergency hangar is 2 sections ahead." They pressed on, emerging finally into a small auxiliary hangar that housed Earth's diplomatic shuttle, a sleek vessel designed for both atmospheric and short-range space flight. It was modest compared to the grand ships of older species, but it represented something uniquely human: efficiency, adaptability, and the ability to exceed design specifications when necessary. Arya had always been proud of human engineering's tendency to build things that performed well above their rated capabilities. "Get everyone aboard," Arya ordered, already moving to the shuttle's entry ramp. "Flight crew, start pre-flight checks. We launch in 5 minutes." As the group rushed to comply, Kelthras caught her arm again. Arya turned to face him, and the look in his golden eyes made her heart ache. They stood in the shadow of the shuttle, the sounds of hurried preparation echoing around them, and for a moment, the crisis faded. "Come with us," Arya found herself saying, the words escaping before she could consider their full implications. "You said it yourself, this coup destroys everything the Concordat stands for. Help us fight back." Kelthrus's skin rippled through a dozen colors: conflict, affection, duty, desire. When he spoke, his voice was soft, meant only for her. "I cannot. Not yet. There are those among my people and others who will resist this from within. We can undermine the coalition's legitimacy, maybe even turn some of their support if we work carefully." He reached up, his long fingers brushing her cheek in a gesture that would have scandalized both their cultures if anyone was watching. "But I swear to you, Arya-chan, this is not how our story ends. I will find a way to stand with Earth when the time comes." "Commander," the pilot called from inside the shuttle. "We're ready for departure. But station traffic control has locked down all launch protocols. We can't open the hangar bay doors." Kelthrus stepped back, his expression shifting to one of focused determination. "I can override the lockdown, but it will take several minutes and it will alert coalition forces to your location. Once those doors open, you'll have perhaps 90 seconds before their fighters can scramble to intercept you." "Can you make the jump to hyperspace before they reach you?" he asked Arya directly. She calculated quickly: distance to minimum safe hyperspace transition, the shuttle's acceleration capabilities, likely response time of coalition fighters. It would be close, dangerously close. "If our engines perform at 110% of rated capacity," she said. "So yes, probably." Kelthrus actually smiled at that, a very human expression he'd picked up from her. "Of course. Because humans never met a specification they didn't exceed." He moved to a maintenance terminal, his fingers dancing over the interface while his consciousness reached into the station systems. "Go. Strap in. When those doors open, don't hesitate." Arya wanted to say more, to find words for the complicated tangle of emotions that had been growing between them, but there wasn't time. She squeezed his arm once, feeling the slight tingle of his bioelectric field, then ran for the shuttle. Inside, she found her seat in the co-pilot's position beside Lieutenant Commander Sarah Rodriguez, Earth's best pilot. "We'll have 90 seconds once the doors open," Arya informed her crisply. "Make them count." Sarah's hands moved over the controls with practiced precision, bringing the engines to full standby. 90 seconds is a lifetime, Commander. We'll be halfway to Earth before they know we're gone." Through the shuttle's viewports, Arya watched Kelthrus work at the terminal. His skin glowed with ethereal light as he poured energy into the station systems, overwhelming the coalition's lockdowns through sheer force of will. Alarms began to blare throughout the hangar. He'd been detected. The massive hangar doors began to grind open, revealing the star-studded darkness of space beyond. Sarah's hands tightened on the controls. The moment the gap was wide enough, she fired the engines. The shuttle leapt forward like a predator released from a cage, the acceleration pressing everyone back into their seats. Through the viewports, Arya saw Kelthrus one last time, his hand raised in farewell or blessing, before the shuttle shot through the opening and into the black. "Coalition fighters launching," Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the danger. 4, 6, 8 contacts. They're moving to intercept." The shuttle's engines screamed as Sarah pushed them beyond their design limits, the vessel shuddering with the strain. Behind them, energy weapons began to fire, brilliant lances of light that cut through space where they'd been seconds before. "Hyperspace transition in 60 seconds, Arya called out, monitoring their position. 45 seconds. 30. The fighters were gaining, their superior speed closing the distance. More weapons fire streaked past, one blast close enough that the shuttle's shields flared, filling the cabin with warning lights. "They're trying to disable our engines," Sarah said through gritted teeth, executing an evasive maneuver that made the shuttle's superstructure groan. 15 seconds to hyperspace transition, Arya announced. "Hold her together, Sarah." 10 seconds. 5. 4. 3. The universe stretched, twisted, and then snapped. The stars became lines of light, and the shuttle punched through into hyperspace, leaving the coalition fighters and the coup behind. For a moment, there was only the eerie calm of faster-than-light travel and the sound of 14 humans breathing hard. Then Ambassador Trell spoke from the passenger compartment, his voice carrying the weight of realization. "They'll say we fled. That Earth refused to accept the Concordat's judgment and turned to piracy." Arya turned in her seat to face the ambassador and the others. "Let them say what they want. We know the truth. The Concordat didn't vote to subjugate Earth. A faction of power-hungry tyrants attempted a military coup and we refused to be their first victims." She stood, her voice growing stronger, filling the small cabin. "We're going home. And when we get there, we're going to tell Earth exactly what happened. We're going to show them that the choice isn't between submission and isolation." Her eyes hardened with determination, with the fire that had carried humanity from caves to the stars in the blink of an evolutionary eye. "We're going to give them a third option, resistance." Outside the shuttle, hyperspace flowed past in rivers of distorted light, carrying them toward Earth at speeds that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. Behind them, the carefully maintained order of 30,000 years was beginning to crumble. Ahead, a world of 8 billion humans was about to learn that their place in the galaxy would not be given, it would be taken. And deep in the station they'd left behind, a tyranny officer stood in a lockdown hangar, his skin glowing with defiant gold, and began to plan a resistance of his own. The shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere 36 hours after their escape from Valerian Station, and Arya watched her homeworld rise to meet them with a mixture of relief and dread. They'd spent the journey in hyperspace monitoring Concordat communication channels, watching as the Coalition's narrative spread like a virus through official networks. Earth was being labeled as rogue, its representatives accused of fleeing legitimate justice, its people painted as dangerous primitives who had revealed their true nature. But the Coalition had made a critical miscalculation. They'd assumed that controlling official channels meant controlling all information. They'd forgotten that humanity had built its entire digital age on the principle that information, once released, could never truly be contained. Marcus had transmitted their sensor logs, communication recordings, and tactical data to Earth Command before the station fell. More importantly, he'd sent it to a dozen independent news networks, scientific institutions, and even civilian social media platforms. By the time the shuttle touched down at the Geneva Command Center, the truth was already spreading across Earth's networks faster than the Coalition could suppress it. Millions of humans were watching the footage of Coalition warships emerging from hyperspace with forbidden weapons, hearing Admiral Zethros' ultimatum, seeing the proof that the vote had never been about justice, it had been a prelude to subjugation. Arya stepped off the shuttle into organized chaos. The command center, a sprawling complex that served as humanity's central military coordination hub, was operating at what looked like wartime capacity. Officers rushed between stations, holographic displays showed fleet positions and strategic assessments, and the air hummed with urgent energy. Fleet Admiral Hassan Okoro stood waiting at the landing pad, his tall frame and silver-streaked hair projecting an authority that had guided Earth's military through 2 decades of integration with Concordat forces. His dark eyes met Arya's, and she saw both welcome and grim determination there. "Commander Chen," he said, his deep voice carrying easily over the ambient noise. "Welcome home. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." He gestured toward the command center's main building. "The Security Council is convening in 20 minutes. They'll want to hear your first-hand account." As they walked, Ambassador Trell and the other rescued personnel peeling off toward debriefing stations, Admiral Okoro brought Arya up to speed. "The Coalition's narrative is falling apart faster than they can rebuild it. Turns out when you try to suppress information in an era of instantaneous galactic communication, you only make people more curious. We're receiving covert transmissions from sympathetic species throughout Concordat space, the Minorans, the Taloshi, even some Tyranny factions are expressing private support." Arya's heart jumped at the mention of the Tyranny, but she kept her expression professional. "Private support won't stop a fleet armed with dark matter weapons, sir." Okoro's smile was sharp. "No, it won't. Which is why Earth is done playing by rules that were designed to keep us weak." He palmed open a security door, leading her into a corridor that descended deep underground. For the past 15 years, since we joined the Concordat, we've been operating under technology restriction treaties. Limitations on our AI development, our quantum computing, our genetic engineering, our weapons research. We accepted those restrictions as the price of membership. They entered a massive elevator that dropped rapidly, Aria's stomach lurching with the acceleration. Those restrictions are no longer in effect, Okoro continued. As of 18 hours ago, the Security Council unanimously voted to declare Earth in a state of emergency autonomy. Every black project, every restricted research program, every technology we shelved to comply with Concordat regulations, all of it is being brought online. The elevator doors opened onto a sight that made Aria's breath catch. They stood on an observation platform overlooking an underground facility that stretched for what looked like miles. Thousands of people worked on assembly lines and construction platforms, building ships unlike anything Aria had seen in her Concordat service. These vessels were sleek and angular, bristling with weapons ports and sensor arrays, their hulls composed of materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Welcome to Project Defiance," Okoro said with obvious pride. "What you're seeing is the culmination of 15 years of humanity doing what we do best, nodding politely at restrictions while secretly figuring out how to exceed them. Every ship down there incorporates technology that's theoretically impossible by Concordat standards. Our AI systems make their computers look like abacuses. Our weapons can punch through shields that are supposed to be impenetrable. In our propulsion systems," he smiled. "Let's just say we found some interesting shortcuts through the laws of physics." Aria stared at the impossible scene before her, her mind struggling to process the implications. How many people knew about this? Okoro's expression grew serious. Need-to-know basis only. We couldn't risk Concordat intelligence discovering it. But now? He gestured at the bustling facility. Now we're accelerating production. Every major nation has similar facilities coming online. We'll have a functional defense fleet in 3 weeks. Not large enough to challenge the coalition directly, but enough to make attacking Earth extremely costly. Before Aria could respond, her communication implant chirped with an incoming message flagged with maximum encryption. She tapped it active, and her heart nearly stopped when Kelthras's voice filled her head, distorted by layers of security protocols but unmistakable. "Aria, if you're receiving this, you made it home safely. Thank the stars." His relief was palpable even through the scrambled transmission. "I don't have much time. Coalition intelligence is monitoring all communications, but I've established a secure network using old tyranny rebel protocols from our last civil war. There are more of us than you might think, species who see this coup for what it is and refuse to be part of it." Aria moved to a private corner of the observation platform, her full attention on the message. Kelthras continued, "The coalition is preparing to make an example of Earth. They're assembling an enforcement armada, over 300 ships. The official story is that they're going to blockade your system, force compliance through economic pressure. But I've seen the tactical plans, Aria. They're preparing for a strike operation. They mean to cripple Earth's infrastructure and occupy your world." Ice flowed through Aria's veins, but Kelthras wasn't finished. "However, their timeline is longer than you might think. They need to maintain the appearance of Concordat legitimacy, which means going through the motions of diplomatic processes first. You have perhaps 8 weeks before the Armada launches. Use that time." His voice softened, becoming more personal. "I'm organizing something on this end. There are species who remember what the Concordat was supposed to stand for: cooperation, mutual advancement, protection of emerging civilizations. We're building a counter-coalition, but it's delicate work. If I'm discovered before we're ready, we'll lose everything." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, Aria could hear the emotion he was trying to control. "I meant what I said before you left. This isn't how our story ends. Find a way to survive the next few months, Aria-chen. I'll find a way to stand with you when the time comes. Until then, stay alive, and show the galaxy why humanity deserves its place among the stars." The message ended, leaving Aria standing alone with a maelstrom of emotions and strategic calculations swirling in her mind. 8 weeks. They had 8 weeks to prepare for a war against an enemy with thousands of years of military experience and technology that supposedly outclassed their own. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Arya felt something else rising in her chest, defiant determination mixed with a peculiarly human brand of optimism that had carried their species through every impossible challenge they'd ever faced. The Security Council meeting was intense, with representatives from every major nation present either physically or via holographic projection. Arya gave her full report, holding nothing back about the coalition's capabilities, their timeline, and the strategic situation. When she finished, the Chinese representative, Minister Zhao, spoke first. So we have 8 weeks to prepare for an invasion by a force that outnumbers and outguns us substantially. Some might call this a hopeless situation. His expression shifted into a slight smile. I call it adequate motivation. The Russian minister, Volkov, leaned forward. Commander Chen, in your professional assessment, what are our actual chances in a direct military confrontation? Arya considered carefully before answering. In a conventional engagement using Concordat standard tactics and technology? We'd lose. Badly. She paused, letting that sink in. But humanity stopped fighting conventional wars about 300 years ago. We specialize in asymmetric warfare, in turning our opponent's advantages into weaknesses. If we're smart about this, if we use every edge our technology gives us and fight on our terms, not theirs, then I'd say our chances are better than they have any right to be. Admiral Okoro pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. We've been developing a defense strategy we're calling the Hornet's Nest Protocol. The coalition will expect us to meet them in open space, to try to match them ship for ship. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to turn this entire system into a weapons platform. The display shifted, showing thousands of small markers spreading throughout the solar system, in orbit around planets, hidden in asteroid fields, stationed at Lagrange points. These are autonomous defense platforms, Okoro explained. Each one is small, cheap to produce, and individually insignificant. But each one is also equipped with an AI smart enough to coordinate with thousands of others, and weapons capable of punching well above their weight class. We're also weaponizing our civilian infrastructure in ways the coalition won't expect, added the European Union's representative, Chancellor Weber. Our communication satellites, our mining drones, our cargo haulers, we're retrofitting everything that can fly with either weapons or surveillance systems. The coalition is planning to fight a military. They're going to find themselves fighting an entire solar system. Over the following weeks, Arya watched Earth transform itself with a speed that would have seemed impossible to any other species. But humanity had always excelled at rapid adaptation when survival was on the line. Factories that had produced consumer goods were retooled for military production. Civilian AI researchers were recruited to develop tactical systems. The same hacker collectives that had been nuisances to corporate security became valuable assets in developing cyber warfare capabilities that could target Concordat computer systems. Arya found herself leading a task force charged with training Earth's defensive fleet crews. Many were veterans of Concordat service like herself, but many more were civilians with space flight experience, cargo haulers, mining operators, even racing pilots. They were a motley collection compared to the rigid hierarchies of Concordat military forces, but what they lacked in uniformity they made up for in creativity and adaptability. During one training exercise, a former asteroid miner named Jackson executed a maneuver that used his ship's mining laser to superheat a pocket of ice, creating an instant smokescreen that confused enemy sensors. It wasn't in any Concordat tactical manual, but it was brilliant. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need, Arya told him afterward. The coalition has been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They've perfected conventional space warfare. So we're not going to fight conventionally. We're going to be unpredictable, unconventional, and absolutely relentless. Throughout this period, Arya received periodic encrypted messages from Kelthras. His counter-coalition was growing, he reported, but slowly. The Minorans had committed 3 defense fleets to the cause. A faction of Taloshi commanders had secretly pledged to stand down if ordered to attack Earth. Most significantly, a growing number of tyranny, particularly younger generations who had been inspired by humanity's rapid advancement, were openly questioning their government's support of the coalition. "You're becoming a symbol," Kelthras told her in one message. "The species who see this coup for what it is, they're looking to Earth as proof that the coalition can be resisted. Every day you survive, every time you refuse to back down, you give hope to others who want to fight back but fear they stood alone." His messages were professional in content but personal in tone, and Arya found herself composing careful responses that walked the same line. They discussed tactics and intelligence, but woven through it all was an undercurrent of deeper feeling, a connection that distance and political reality couldn't sever. 6 weeks after the escape from Valerian Station, everything changed. Arya was in a strategy meeting when every communication system in the command center suddenly activated simultaneously. The holographic displays flickered, and then Kelthras's image appeared, not scrambled or encrypted, but broadcast openly for everyone to see. His skin glowed with determined gold, and he stood not in hiding but in what looked like a tyranny government chamber. "People of Earth," he began, his voice carrying harmonic resonances that the translators rendered into dozens of languages simultaneously. "My name is Kelthras of the Tyranny Ascendancy, and I am speaking to you at great personal risk to deliver a message that my government and the coalition do not want you to hear." Arya's heart hammered in her chest. What was he doing? This kind of open broadcast would mark him as a traitor to the coalition, would put a target on him that he could never escape. Kelthras continued, his golden eyes staring out from the holographic display as if he could see everyone watching. 8 weeks ago, a coalition of species attempted to subvert 30,000 years of Concordat law to subjugate your world. They told themselves it was necessary, that humanity's rapid advancement was dangerous, that you needed to be controlled for the good of galactic stability. They were wrong. He gestured, and the display shifted to show data, communications, tactical plans, classified documents. What you're seeing is proof that the coalition has been planning this subjugation for years. Since the moment humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, there have been those who feared you. Not because you were violent or dangerous, but because you were everything they claimed was impossible, a species advancing at revolutionary speed through cooperation, creativity, and sheer determination. The display shifted again, this time showing a star map with hundreds of systems highlighted. These are the species who have joined what we call the true Concordat, those of us who believe the original ideals of cooperation and mutual advancement are worth preserving. We number in the dozens now, representing billions of citizens across Concordat space. And we have a message for the coalition: if you attack Earth, you attack us all. Kelthras's image returned to center focus. The coalition believes they can reassert control through force, that fear will bring the Concordat back in line. They're about to learn the same lesson that Earth's own history could have taught them, that people united by genuine belief are stronger than any number of warships. He paused, and for just a moment, his expression softened, his eyes holding a warmth that Arya recognized. To the people of Earth specifically, you have not been abandoned. You are not alone. And when the coalition armada arrives at your doorstep, they will find not a helpless victim, but the capital of a resistance that spans the galaxy. The transmission ended, but its impact rippled across Earth like a shockwave. Within hours, similar broadcasts began appearing from other species, Mine-Ran scientists declaring their support, Taloshi fleet commanders announcing they would not participate in the invasion, even scattered Tyranny military units openly defecting to join the true Concordat. The coalition's narrative of unanimous support crumbled as the truth became impossible to suppress. Admiral Okoro found Arya standing alone in an observation room, watching the news feeds scroll across multiple displays. "Your Tyranny friend just changed the game," he said quietly. "He made this about more than Earth's survival. He made it about the soul of the Concordat itself." Arya nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. Kelthras had just painted a target on himself that would never fade, had sacrificed his safety and possibly his life to give Earth a fighting chance. The strategic part of her mind recognized the brilliance of his move. By framing the conflict as true Concordat versus coalition, he'd given hesitant species a side to rally behind. But the part of her that had grown to care deeply for a certain tyranny officer could only think about the danger he'd just placed himself in. "We're receiving a coded transmission," an officer announced from the communications station. "Tyranny encryption, routed through about 100 proxy servers. It's addressed to you specifically, Commander." Aria's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the message. Kelthra's appeared on her personal display, and she could see he was somewhere different now, somewhere dark and cramped, hiding, on the run. "I know what you're thinking," he said with a slight smile. "That I just did something reckless and possibly suicidal. You're not wrong. But someone had to be first. Someone had to stand up publicly and say that the Coalition doesn't speak for all of us." His expression grew serious. "I'm going underground now. There's a network of resistance cells forming across Coalition space, species who are ready to fight but need coordination and leadership. I'm going to provide it." He paused, and the warmth returned to his eyes. "When this is over, when the Coalition is defeated or reformed, I'm coming to Earth. We're going to have that conversation we've been avoiding for 3 years, the one about what we mean to each other and what future we might build together. But first, we both have a war to win." The final message was simple, coordinates attached. "When the Coalition fleet arrives, we'll be ready. The true Concordat stands with Earth." 7 weeks and 6 days after Aria's escape from Valerian Station, Coalition sensors detected the approaching armada. 347 warships, the largest military force assembled in Concordat space in over 2,000 years. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system in a display meant to intimidate, to break humanity's will before a single shot was fired. They found something they hadn't anticipated. Earth's defensive fleet numbered barely 70 ships, outmatched and outgunned by any conventional assessment. But surrounding Earth, scattered throughout the solar system in a formation that suggested careful planning, were vessels from 43 different species. The true Concordat had come, bringing with them 212 warships that had slipped away from Coalition control over the previous weeks. Mine-ran dreadnoughts floated in formation beside human destroyers. Teloshi carriers coordinated with tyranny energy manipulation vessels. A dozen other species, some who had been part of the Coalition mere days before, now stood in defiance of it. From the bridge of her flagship, the newly commissioned EDS Resistance, Aria watched the tactical displays with Admiral Okoro at her side. They'd been given joint command of Earth's defense fleet, with Aria's Concordat military experience complementing Okoro's strategic brilliance. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Coalition Fleet Admiral Zethros demands our immediate surrender and the dissolution of what he's calling an illegal rebel assembly." Aria and Okoro exchanged glances. "Open a channel," Aria ordered. "All frequencies, full broadcast. Let every ship on both sides hear this." When the channel opened, Aria spoke with a clarity and conviction that surprised even herself. "Fleet Admiral Zethros, this is Commander Aria Chin of the Earth Defense Ship Resistance. On behalf of the true Concordat and the people of Earth, I have a response to your demands." "No," she continued before Zethros could respond. "For 30,000 years, the Concordat stood for cooperation, advancement, and mutual protection. You've perverted those ideals into tools of oppression. You've used fear and military force to maintain control. You've forgotten that the Concordat's strength never came from its weapons, but from its principles." The tactical display showed Coalition ships moving into attack formations, but Aria wasn't finished. "You came here expecting to find a frightened backwater world begging for mercy. Instead, you found the capital of a resistance that includes some of your own former allies. You have a choice to make, Admiral. You can attack, and we will defend ourselves with every weapon at our disposal. Some of us will die. Many of you will die. And when the battle is over, the Concordat as we've known it will be finished, torn apart by civil war." She paused, letting the weight of that future settle over both fleets. "Or you can stand down, and we can find a better way forward. A Concordat reformed, where voices like Earth's are heard rather than silenced, where advancement is celebrated rather than feared." where the ideals that sustained 30,000 years of peace are restored. For a long moment, there was only silence across the communication channels. Then sensors detected movement in the coalition fleet, but not the attack run everyone expected. Instead, 18 ships broke formation, their transponders identifying them as Taloshi vessels. They repositioned themselves, moving slowly and deliberately to take up positions alongside the true Concordat forces. "This is Taloshi Commander Virex," a new voice announced. "We will not fire upon those defending the Concordat's true principles. We stand with Earth." More ships began to peel away from the coalition formation, a Vrex hive ship, 3 Corsian cruisers, even 2 tyranny vessels whose commanders announced they could no longer serve a government that had betrayed everything they believed in. The coalition fleet was fracturing before the battle even began. When Fleet Admiral Zethros finally responded, his voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "You're destroying thousands of years of order, of stability. The Concordat maintained peace because species knew their place, accepted the wisdom of those who came before." Aria's response was immediate. "The Concordat maintained peace because it offered something better than war, cooperation toward common goals. The moment you turned it into a hierarchy enforced at gunpoint, you destroyed everything it stood for. We're not ending the Concordat, Admiral. We're saving it from you." The standoff continued for 3 more hours, with more ships defecting from the coalition until their numerical advantage had evaporated. Finally, as Earth rotated into view behind the true Concordat fleet, Zethros made his decision. "This isn't over," he transmitted, his tone promising future conflict. "But today we will withdraw. The Concordat Council will decide this matter properly." It was a face-saving retreat, but it was still a retreat. The coalition fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and vanished, leaving behind a system full of ships from dozens of species, united not by force but by choice. The celebration that erupted across Earth and the true Concordat fleet was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Concordat would have to be rebuilt, reformed into something that honored both its ancient ideals and the new reality of species like humanity who advanced too rapidly to be contained by old assumptions. It would be complicated, contentious, and take years to resolve. But it would happen through dialogue and cooperation, not at gunpoint. 3 days after the coalition's withdrawal, a small tyranny vessel requested permission to dock at the Valerian station, which had been liberated by true Concordat forces and was now serving as neutral territory for preliminary negotiations. Aria stood in the docking bay, her heart racing in a way that combat had never quite managed, as the vessel's airlock cycled open. Kelthras emerged, looking tired and worn from weeks of coordinating resistance operations, but his skin brightened to warm gold when he saw her. They stood for a moment, mindful of the cameras and the political significance of every gesture, keeping a professional distance. But then Kelthras smiled, that very human expression he'd learned from her, and spoke loudly enough for everyone in the bay to hear. "Commander Chen, on behalf of the true Concordat, I've been asked to deliver a formal proposal. Earth has proven itself as a center of resistance, of innovation, and of the ideals we're fighting to preserve. We would like to request that Earth serve as the provisional capital for true Concordat operations while we work to reform the larger organization." It was the official reason for his visit, and it was significant. Earth, the world that was supposed to become a servitor colony, being offered a leadership position in shaping the Concordat's future. But Aria barely heard the political implications because Kelthras's eyes were saying something entirely different, something meant only for her. Later, after the formal negotiations and the political ceremonies, Aria found herself on an observation deck overlooking Earth. Kelthras joined her there, and this time there were no cameras, no delegations, no political considerations, just 2 people who had found something unexpected in the midst of galactic upheaval. "So," Kelthras said softly, standing close enough that she could feel his bioelectric field, "I believe I promised we would have a conversation. About what we mean to each other and what future we might build." Aria turned to face him fully, reaching out to take his hand, a gesture that would have been shocking to both their cultures weeks ago but felt perfectly natural now. "I think we just started building it," she said, looking past him to where ships from dozens of species floated in peaceful formation around her homeworld. A future where different species can stand together as equals. Where advancement is celebrated. Where someone from Earth and someone from halfway across the galaxy can look at each other and see not alien and human, but simply, possibility. Kelthrus's skin rippled through shades of blue and gold, affection and joy mixing in patterns Arya had learned to read. Possibility, he repeated, his harmonics making the words sound like music. I like that. Though I should warn you, my people have a saying, those who reach across stars to touch another soul find their lives forever changed. Arya smiled, squeezing his hand gently. Humanity has a similar saying, the best journeys take us to unexpected destinations. I think we're both about to discover just how true that is. Below them, Earth rotated peacefully, no longer a minor colony destined for subjugation, but a symbol of resistance, a capital of reformation, and a home to at least one human who had learned that the greatest victories weren't won through weapons alone, but through the courage to stand for what was right and the willingness to reach across impossible divides to find connection. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, young, impetuous, adaptable humanity, stood at the center of that change, ready to show the cosmos that the species who had climbed from caves to the stars in mere thousands of years was just getting started. And in a quiet observation deck on a station that had seen both betrayal and liberation, two officers from different worlds stood together, watching the future unfold and beginning to build something neither had quite expected, but both were ready to fight for.